Welcome to this edition of UpFront with the Superintendent. I'm your host, Ann David. New Hanover County and much of North Carolina is still in recovery from Hurricane Florence. This month, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Tim Markley, joins us to talk about the hurricane's effects on our school and the current state of our school system. We will also have Mr. Eddie Anderson, Assistant Superintendent for Planning and Operations. He will be on to share details of the damage to our school buildings and the repairs that are ongoing. But first, Dr. Markley joins us. Welcome, Dr. Markley.
Well, it's good to have you back. I hope you weathered the storm okay.
We did. Nothing to complain about. I know you've had your hands full since Hurricane Florence came to town. Just kind of give us an overview of what's been going on.
Well, as you know, we were out in preparation for the storm, and a lot of folks evacuated. And then 5 of our schools were also served as shelters for the storm: Trask, Coddington, Noble, Eaton, and then they consolidated those down into Hoggard after the storm to have them all in one place. Can't say enough good things, incredible things about the folks who worked those shelters, both the county employees and school employees. And our schools got hit. We had some serious damage at schools like College Park. We had water damage at most of our schools. But as soon as the storm was over, because we live where we live and we have some resources, we were able to get in and start getting those schools back into shape for our students. And fortunately, we were able to get students back in and a little ahead of some of our systems around us. But that's a credit to the folks who work in this district. It's a credit to the school board and commissioners who had the foresight to bank some money for emergencies like this.
That's wonderful, with everyone working together to make this happen. I know that's very important. Is there a preparedness plan in place for these type of situations?
Yes, hurricanes aren't a new phenomenon for here at the Southeast. So we have full checklists and plans that we go through prior to a storm. Hopefully never have to get deep into those plans, but on this one we did. But our buildings were prepared, our folks were in good shape. The difference with this one, it wasn't a storm that moved through, it sat here for 2 days, and just the incredible amount of water caused some significant damage. And it impacted not just our schools, but the folks who work for us.
Yeah, could you tell me a little bit about what you've seen with students and faculty and staff that have been impacted from the storm?
Well, I spent 2 days at the shelter at Trask and filling in for Maggie Rollinson. And on that Saturday night, when it just wouldn't stop raining, I saw one of my teachers come in who had almost nothing. Her house had been flooded. She came in with just what she had in her arms. And then you have to turn around and ask that person in a couple of weeks to go back and teach students. But I was in her class that first day back, and she was doing that. That's the kind of resiliency and spirit you see among the folks in our schools. We had to move College Park over to Castle Hayne and Holly Shelter. 200 teachers turned out that day to help those teachers get their classes ready for students. There were stories like that all over the place. For the 3 weeks we were out, we had students, parents, teachers visiting others who were in need, delivering food, working in shelters. The spirit in this community is just amazing, and it came through. And so I have no doubt that we will come through this stronger than we went into it.
I know that a big concern of families, and I'm sure of teachers, is the school system schedule, the calendar, because you were out for such a substantial amount of time. Can you kind of explain what they're going to do with the calendar with this?
The legislature has allowed us to forgive up to 20 days. Now that doesn't mean we're going to wipe 20 days out of the calendar, but we will look at the calendar and see where we can make some adjustments and add back some time. We have several half days that are planned. Those will now be full instructional days. There's a Monday after Easter that was going to be a day off that'll most likely be a school day. So we'll look at places where we can put back some time. Hopefully we'll have a full plan in November that we'll send to the board for approval.
Okay, but holidays
we're going to try to keep Christmas and Easter breaks as intact as possible. We understand that folks have made plans for those. But we haven't hit the winter season yet, and we've missed days the last several years for snow or ice. So we're rooting for a mild winter this year.
Yeah, absolutely, we've all been through quite a bit. Now, after everyone's returned to school as of our broadcast, can you tell me any challenges or any strengths that have happened since we've returned back to school? I know you said everyone's working together to get back, but now that we're back in.
There are some challenges. The day we opened up school again, we still had about 20 students living in the shelter. So we had to go over, find out what schools they went to, and make arrangements to get those students from the shelter to school for the next month. That's one challenge. We have some teachers who are still struggling with dealing with getting their own homes back together and working with us with students. We have students who are coming to school who their house has been wiped out. So there's those challenges, and we've got our student services, counselors, social workers working at the school level to really make that happen. We've got issues related to supplies, and I cannot speak enough to the schools around the country and the organizations who have sent in supplies to teachers. There's just a lot of little things you don't realize that water can get into or storm can damage that we're bringing back.
I would imagine, I think the water, as you mentioned before, is key. It seemed to seep in everywhere.
Yes.
Are there any things that you would like to tell parents, things that are important to remember or for things for them to do for their students or for their schools during this time?
Well, it's talk to your kids, talk about the experience. For some of them, they've never seen anything like this, and give them an opportunity to express how they feel about it. At school, it'll take us a couple days to get back into that routine, but we are going to get back into the routine of school. Our maintenance folks, and Eddie will talk more about this, have been in those schools. We've been clearing out walls that needed to be cleared because of water damage and repaired. It may not look perfect when you walk back in, but understand we've been through those schools. We've made repairs to get the schools ready, and we'll get them back as good as new as quick as we can.
Yeah, I know that is a concern of parents, sending them back to schools because we see so much that moisture can do, so that's important.
But there's processes and procedures in place. We have contracted with an outside environmental company to do assessments of all of our buildings before we send students back in.
That's great. Is there anything else you would like to share with parents before we go to break?
First of all, welcome back. Let's get back on track and get ourselves focused back on school. We are fortunate to live where we live, and if you need help, talk to your folks at school, and we'll try to get you help or find you an agency that can help you.
Yeah, because I know that several people, as you mentioned, are still displaced.
Yes.
And getting them back in a regular routine is important for the students. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll go to break and talk to Eddie about the buildings, and then we'll come back and talk to you more about community involvement and helping people involved in the hurricane.
All right.
So don't go away. We'll be right back with Mr. Eddie Anderson, who's Assistant Superintendent for Planning and Operations, and we'll continue to take a look at Hurricane Florence's effect on our school system.
Your company can join these local businesses in offering students with disabilities the much-needed experience to compete in today's job market. For young people with disabilities, participating in mentoring programs, job shadowing, and internships are great ways to make them stand out among other job applicants. If your company would like to add a student intern, then contact the Special Education Department now at 910-254-4445.
Welcome back to UpFront with the Superintendent. Many school buildings across the district suffered damage from Hurricane Florence. Some of those buildings had major damage and are still under repair. We are joined now by Eddie Anderson, Assistant Superintendent for Planning and Operations. He will tell us about the status of the damage and the repairs. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. It's good to be here.
You've had a busy time these last few weeks.
Yeah, I think the last 3 weeks have just kind of all run together.
I guess what we need to start with is what damage have the school buildings sustained from the storm?
Well, I would, in general, say that we had what I would categorize or as minor damage in the majority of our buildings. But you know, when you have 45 buildings, it becomes a major task to you know, to take care of and deal with. We had moderate to major damage in you know, 3 or 4 buildings, and you know, as a result, we've had to make some changes in locations for a couple of schools for a temporary period of time.
Which schools were the hardest hit?
Well, those would be College Park, and you know, College Park has been attending school at our Sidbury Road facility, which was former Rock Church, and we had significant flooding out there, and so they have been relocated to Holly Shelter in Castle Hayne for right now an undetermined amount of time. And then we had some flooding and water damage at Williams and Gregory. So those 2 schools, we took advantage of the year-round schools being an intersection. So Williams is at Coddington and Gregory is at Snipes. They'll be there through next week, and then we'll get them back in their buildings starting on Monday the 15th.
Well, you mentioned College Park. I know most people think about that. Their new school is in construction.
It is.
And how much longer before that will actually be up and operational?
Right. Well, we'll have that building wrapped up in construction in the spring, and the plan was then to you know, move furniture and equipment in there and you know, have them start in August. But you know, we're looking at you know, how soon could we move them in,
Right.
even if it's not at the not this school year, just you know, moving them in as soon as we can.
Absolutely. Well, I know each of us are concerned about our own homes and repair, and we've all dealt with so much from trees to water damage. I'm sure it will be impossible for us to understand what you do when you have as many buildings as you have to deal with. Where do you start? How do you prepare when the hurricane, we see it coming this way? Do you take preventative measures?
We do. I think you know, the good thing about a hurricane is you have a lot of advanced warning, and I guess that can also be the bad thing, because you know, at some point you're just like, just get here. You know, we've been talking about this for 2 weeks, but it gives us the opportunity to line up contractors and people to respond to needs that, I mean, there's certain things that you know you're going to have to do, and it's just initial assessments and getting out to our buildings. So we had a northern team, a central team, and a southern team working alongside with our in-house maintenance and facilities personnel that went out, did assessments, and then these teams had subcontractors that were ready and able to respond to emergencies. And you know, in the end, I think that that's what minimized the damage in our schools. It was that quick response that that enabled us to get back into school as soon as we were able to.
Well, and I know many of our schools are shelters, or were shelters at the time. So you actually had people in schools.
We had 5 shelters open during the storm, and then they consolidated that at Hoggard High School, which was a big help, I think, to the county and the emergency personnel as well as the schools, because it allowed us to consolidate resources to one location.
Absolutely, and that allowed you to get in those other schools and get them back up and ready.
That's right.
Is there anything else you would like to add for that? I mean, the system as a whole, what are schools are still going to be working on? Primarily the Rock Church for College Park?
Right. Well, primarily the Rock Church. We did have significant flooding in there, and you know, we're doing the cleanup and demo. Most of the other schools, it was just in certain areas. And there are a few schools where maybe a mobile unit isn't available, or you know, maybe a particular space or classroom isn't available. But I think we'll have all of those back open within the next week.
And just to give people perspective, do you have like a date? Because as we tape this, folks may hear a little later.
Sure. Well, I think by the end of next week, the week of the 15th
Of October.
we should have all spaces back open. As I mentioned, Williams and Gregory will be back at their schools starting on the 15th.
Okay, but Rock Church probably will not.
Rock Church will not. We're still we're doing a lot of cleanup and demo, and still trying to assess the overall needs to put that timeline together.
Absolutely. What are some things that I know you assess after everything's over that you learned that would help for next time, or do you feel like you've got the strategy worked this time as well?
Well, I think the response teams were a big plus. Early assessment is critical. Obviously, if you have water in your building, the quicker you can clean that up and get the water out, the better. Water sitting in our buildings for days with no power, is just going to lead to other problems. So that was our goal, was to prevent any further problems and future problems in our buildings and get that water out of there. I think that worked really well. I think we can expand on that with future storms. I can't say enough about really our staff and the principals and everyone. We go through a pre-hurricane readiness or preparedness checklist, and then we go through a post-hurricane checklist. Like you say, with 45 schools, it's impossible for one person to do that. And having our employees, having our custodians and the principals, maintenance staff, operations staff, leaving their homes and their families a lot of times when they had damage themselves, to go out and do that early assessment and to make sure we had access and our buildings were secured is really amazing.
Now I know at one of our other schools we knew there was flooding or neighborhood flooding, and you were telling me a little bit of preventive measures that we did during the construction of the school.
Well, a lot of people will remember when we started construction of Porter's Neck Elementary School that we had a lot of rain. And it was about this time of year too. And the Edgewater Club Road flooded for some time. And so NCDOT and the county and the school system worked together to make a lot of improvements out there. And that portion of the road didn't flood, and we had access to Porter's Neck. So I think that was a success story.
Yeah, those are important to learn from the things that happen to us like this. So.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to tell parents about the schools? I know that parents are always concerned when students go back to school after an issue like this, and we've had a hurricane and so much water damage. Anything you want to tell them about the condition of the schools or the safety of the students?
Yeah, I would just say that we've had a lot of people working to make sure that our schools are safe for teachers, staff, and students. The contractors were working with water extraction companies as well as environmental consultants, and then the school system hired an environmental consultant as well. So when the contractor did the cleanup and did the demo, we had our consultant go in and do visual inspections and test for moisture and water to make sure we got it all. It's easy to clean up what you can see, but through infrared and moisture probing, they can find water and moisture in walls, floors, and ceilings that we didn't see. And so that led to further demo and further clearance and putback. So I would just like to ensure parents and everyone that we had a very good protocols, and I think the methodology that we use is sound, and our schools are in good shape. Maybe I would say as good, if not better, than they were before the storm.
That's excellent. Well, I appreciate you coming on here because parents are so concerned. Once we get our own home base situated, where our students go to school and their safety is important. And having you here to give us assurances and tell us what's been going on was very important. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Well, now don't go away. We'll be right back. Superintendent Markley will rejoin us for the final segment to answer a few more questions. So don't go away.
Start your day with New Hanover County Schools, the morning show. This Rise and Shine program will put a smile on your face and a spring in your step. Best of all, you'll start the day a little smarter, knowing more about our district leaders and teachers, discovering new frontiers in science and technology, and getting the latest school news from across the district. New Hanover County Schools, the morning show, educating all viewers to achieve today and tomorrow in a global community. Only on this channel.
Welcome back for our final segment here on Upfront with the Superintendent. We continue our discussion on Hurricane Florence. Dr. Markley joins us again to take a look at what's being done by those in need, for those in need and how you can help from home. Welcome back, Dr. Markley. One thing we didn't cover in our first two segments was the cost of all this for the school system. Do you kind of want to, Mr. Anderson touched on it, but do you kind of want to get more involved in where all the costs come from for this?
A storm like this causes an amazing amount of damage. As soon as it was over, we had 3 companies in our buildings beginning cleanup. We appropriated an initial $1 million from our fund balance, which is our reserve. We've increased that to $4 million. We expect that that'll probably rise to $6 or $7 million, and that's just the cleanup cost. And then we have to come back and do the restoration cost. How much is it going to cost to put things back the way they were? That'll be several million more dollars. So we're going to be in the $10 to $12 million range on this before we're all done. Now, we do have insurance, so we will try to make claims through insurance and through FEMA and hopefully recoup a lot of those funds, but that's a slow process. We're blessed to have a fund balance, which is sort of, like I said, a reserve of our on our budget of about 5%. And we'll have to tap some of that to get our schools back up and running.
Well, and it's excellent that you are having a tremendous amount of donations, you said.
We are fortunate. I think every news person in the world camped out in Wilmington for this storm, and so a lot of folks called to help out, and we have received school supply donations from around the country, and it has been overwhelming, and we're trying to get those out to the schools. The state has stepped up. They are providing free lunch for every student, regardless of their status, for the month of October at schools.
That's important.
So if there's issues with food, then we'll at least be able to make sure their kids have a couple of hot meals every day.
And I know that makes parents feel much more comfortable about that, because if they're struggling with food at home, at least they know that the students will have a really good meal while they're at school. And I know that Mr. Anderson mentioned that we have Gregory and Mary C. Williams in year-round schools, Snipes and Coddington. Will they still be there when intercession ends, or will they be back in their schools?
We were fortunate that we had 2 schools heading into intercession that we could use as temporary locations. Our plan is to have those students out of those schools, back in their home schools, prior to those schools, Snipes and Coddington, coming back. They're working around the clock at those schools to get them up and ready to get back into.
That's excellent. With everything that's gone on, roads collapsing and trees, are there any transportation issues that you've had or that you foresee?
Yeah, some of our bus routes have been altered. There are sinkholes that we've had to work around. We do an all-call to the parents to let them know about that. There is debris in the road in a lot of places, so that's causing some issues and slowdowns. If you've got questions, call your school first. If not, call our transportation folks, and we'll work with you on those transportation issues.
Excellent. Can you kind of go over some of the resources that are still available to students and families?
The county has set up a FEMA location at the old Sears building in the Independence Mall, and there's a lot of resources there. You can talk to your school social worker, school counselor, and we can try to hook you up with some resources locally as well. There is still a Red Cross shelter at Harbor United Methodist Church that is serving families who are displaced. So there's still a lot of resources out there. Check the county site, check our website, talk to our folks in schools, and if you need help, we're going to try to get you the help you need.
Well, I know the important thing for families that were not hit very hard from the hurricane, and even those that are, that want to pitch in and help the families, help the school system. Do you have any advice on what the best approach for them is?
Most of our schools are going to be doing some kind of cleanup, some kind of fundraiser. They've got folks in their individual schools who are needing assistance. So you'll see that from the school level. Valita Quattlebaum, our public information officer, is coordinating larger district-wide efforts, and you can see those on our websites if you want to help that way. I would encourage you to go there. But the biggest help is working with your child and try to get back to that sense of routine and normalcy for them.
Excellent. Well, one more housekeeping issue, and then we'll wrap up for today. We were talking about calendaring before. You wanted to mention that the election day off.
Traditionally, Election Day is a work day. We are not going to change that work day. It will remain a teacher work day so that the schools are used as polling places.
Excellent. Well, as we wrap up, is there anything you would like to share with parents?
I just can't say thank you enough to the folks in this county. Teachers, staff members, custodians, folks who work those shelters, our county who was there. I never cease to be amazed by the generosity of this community and the willingness to pitch in when needed. So I just want to say thank you to everyone in this community.
Well, thank you so much for being here today to help parents sort out everything that's gone on, and Mr. Anderson for letting us know what's going on in our schools. And everyone, we hope that you're all doing well and getting back to normal. This wraps up this edition of UpFront. On behalf of Dr. Markley and the staff here at NHCS TV, thanks for watching. Again, if you would like information on how to aid those in need and are looking for support during this time, please go to the school system's website at nhcs.net. Right there on the front page, you will find links and information on hurricane recovery. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you for the next edition of UpFront with the Superintendent.